Today on the Tim Manor podcast show at 11:11,
Brilliant.
Rob Hosking's ex-police officer turned motivational speaker, and you're the co-founder of Rise of Happiness.
That's it. That's the one.
How did this come about, mate? Ex-police officer.
Yeah, it's a bit of a story. Ex-police to motivational speaker and talking about happiness. Yeah, it's been a long journey.
TEDx as well. You've been on
TEDx too.
Amazing,
so
mate.
It's been a long, hard but worthwhile journey. So
Tell me about the police then. How did you get into being a police officer?
You know what? People always like, you follow your dreams and everything, like being a police officer. And I was like, nah. Like, I was studying history, fourth year at university.
History
to the police. So it doesn't really go. And I was like, I never wanted to join the police. And then my brother said, oh, look, they're recruiting. And he was going to join. And my family, we were police or military. So I had that idea of, other people's idea of what success and what happiness was, were either police or military. And I was like, right, if someone's going to join the police and it's open, I'm in the fourth year of uni, don't know what I want to do after, didn't want to become a history teacher. I was like, what should I do? I was like, oh, screw it, I'll just apply. Just what's the worst thing that can happen? 3 months later, I've joined. I left university halfway through fourth year, and there I was, starting my first shift in 2nd of February.
Why history in the first place? Just something you're interested in again,
I just loved history, and I'm from Belfast originally, and I just wanted to experience university, get some life experience about me, and I thought going to university was a great way just to kind of break free of some shackles of back home and just experience life in a different country. And I just loved history. I was like, I never thought.
How old were you when you moved over to do
19.
That?
So I was 19, and I just wanted to experience something different. Had enough of Northern Ireland. Like, I loved Northern Ireland, but just had enough of it. Yeah. And just wanted a new experience. History, I said, it was just my passion. I just loved doing it. So I thought I'll just put those two together. And
where did you join the police? Which county?
It was in Tayside, so up in Dundee area. I joined the police force, and it was a challenge to say the least. And that person that I always talk about this, that I was a different person when I joined the police. Then
who was you when you joined the police?
I was someone like fun. First of all, fun, happy. I was so positive. I was, I would always have a laugh, and there was you just see the energy about me that you're like, this guy's full of life and just loves life, so to speak. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, within 6 months of being in the police, that fun-loving person completely changed. All of a sudden, I was becoming this negative person.
What was it, Rob, that did that? The environment?
The environment. Like, I talk about this, where I think the culture of the police, your colleagues, they've been in there for 30 years, some of them 20 years, 10 years. They've seen awful things, and that changes them as people, and they're just bitter. They're bitter about life. They're pessimistic about life. They think everything's crap, and whatever it is, they don't like change. And then all of a sudden that kind of gets put on you. And then when you think, you just witness the worst in people day in, day out. So not only were your colleagues pessimistic, but then when you're seeing the worst in people, you're seeing the murders, you're seeing the physical assaults, you're seeing the sexual assaults, domestic abuse, whatever it may be, you're seeing the worst in people day in and day out. That has an impact on how you view the world. So how I viewed the world at 22 years old, although I knew these things happened, I wasn't subjected to it. And now in the police, I was getting verbally abused left, right and centre, physically abused sometimes. People, they heard the accent especially, and they were like, right, happy days, let's abuse him with his accent. And that was not just my colleagues, that was people too. Like, everybody was going at me for my accent and how I was different. The amount of times people were like, get back to your own country, abusing me. Oh yeah, you're Irish, so-and-so, whatever it may be. And I was just like, bloody hell.
From your colleagues as well?
My colleagues even said, get back to your own country. But it was, that kind of banter in the room, you've got, especially the lad banter. Have your lad banter, and you poke fun at people and stuff. And, I'd have a wee bit of banter, say something to somebody. And it was all just banter, and they always would laugh. But some people didn't like being the butt of the joke in a group. And then all of a sudden, they saw me as the weak one, and the inexperienced one, and they were like, I'm going to make you the butt of the joke. And they were like, oh, what do you know anyway? Get back to your own country. You're over here taking our jobs. And I'm like, funny, you didn't like, you were fine with the banter, but as soon as I put the banter on you, just as a joke, you didn't like it, and then you just got nasty.
It turns toxic.
Exactly. And that culture existed, unfortunately. And I just think, when you're with people, especially in the police, where your colleagues are there to save your life, but the next minute they're happy to make you the butt of the joke around your friends or your other colleagues, you just think, really? Like, is that what we are? I thought we had like a connection here. But no, I'm just another number to you. I'm just another person. You don't give a crap about me. You just want to make sure that you're seen as the big guy in the police station or whatever it may be. And I just thought, that culture's not me.
How long you were in it for?
5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I wanted to leave after the first year. I wanted to leave after the second year, the third year. I wanted to leave, but I just felt trapped.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you leave something like that?
Exactly, that's the thing. I'm paying into a pension. I'm got a good job. Society and people around me would be saying to me, oh, that's a good job. Oh, that's brilliant. You're in the police. Oh, geez, that's brilliant. What are you going to do after? You're going to get promoted and everything like that. So you can imagine subconsciously I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing the right thing. So I just thought, what else could I do? What else could I do? And when I spoke to people, like my dad, I was like, to my dad, I'm not happy. I want to leave. And he's like, well, what else is out there for you? What are you going to do? Because I left university. I didn't get a qualification where I was like, right, I'm going to do this. And I had this drummed into me that I couldn't be anything else. But I could. And it just took me a while to realise that I actually could.
How do you make yourself realise that you are, Rob?
To be honest with you, for me, it was an experience in the police that happened. There was 2 experiences in the police that were very awakening for me.
Like?
So the first one was my mental health deteriorated to the point where I was fed up of life. Now looking back, I realised it wasn't that I was fed up of life. I was just fed up of living my life the way it looked. But as you can imagine, see, when you feel stuck in a life you hate, stuck in a job and in a career that is actually affecting your mental health so much, it really gets to you mentally. And I was on my days off, I was sleeping all the time, and I was just thinking to myself, what is my life? I'm living an unhappy life, and I cannot do anything about it. So when you say
fed up, Robert, do you attach depression to being fed up?
Yeah, I was depressed, but I would describe myself as a functioning depressive, because on my days off, I'd stay in bed, but then as soon as, I needed to go to work, up, get changed, get showered, whatever, went to work, and the big smile would come on my face, and nobody would know that, oh, Rob's suffering. And I just put on a mask. So I was still doing life, but I was so unhappy inside. I was depressed. And I just thought, how could I stop this? How could I stop this rut that I was in? And I thought, the only way I can stop it is by ending my life. And that's when I thought, that is the decision. I have to end my life. So I'm talking people down from bridges, helping them to make sure that they don't take their own life. And I'm looking up at them and I'm thinking, I wish I was up there. I wish I was that person, because I was just so unhappy. And the day that I decided this is it, I didn't have any more hope left. And I thought, this is the day. I made my plans. I was going to hang myself. I was going to hang myself in the garage. I wasn't even going to leave a note, so someone would just have to find me. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking that this is the only way out.
Why no
note? I just didn't feel like anyone deserved an explanation. I didn't feel like anyone deserved anything from me after that. I didn't want to.
Not even your family, Rob?
I know. I looking back, I think, my family deserved more. But I never opened up to them about my mental health. I never wanted them to just...
Nobody knew
apart from me. So you can imagine how much strain that put on me. I was having excessive stress at work. I was cutting down people who'd hung themselves, and I was just thinking to myself, all this negativity was building, and I was thinking to myself, what am I doing with my life? But I couldn't open up. I could not open up to my colleagues. I didn't feel safe to open up to my colleagues, because we'd go to so many mental health calls. And then my colleagues were like, oh, that was a lot of crap, wasn't it? And you think, is this how you view mental health? So you can imagine, I'm thinking, I can't tell you how I feel.
Nobody you could turn to.
Nobody I can turn to. And I've always been a private person anyway. So you think a private person, and then these examples that I was getting shown, how could I feel safe?
That's frightening, that, Rob.
Yeah,
That's frightening, mate.
And that's the thing, I was helping people. I was protecting the public, but I was the one in danger. I wasn't protecting myself. I didn't give a crap about who I was as a person, or my future, whatever it may be. I just didn't care, because I was like, I can see a way out now, because I'd planned it for a while. But I was like, I'm just want to end it, and it just took me a while to actually think I've made my plans.
So you got the day there on the day.
The days on the day. I'm on the day, and I get out of my bed, and I'm like, this is it. I'm going to take my own life. And I get emotional even thinking about it now. And I looked down at my dog, and he looked back up at me, and he gave me a big lick. And it was that saved my life, because I looked down at him, and his wee face looking up at me, and it was that expecting face of, give me some attention, give me some love. And for that,
somebody wanted you.
Yeah, somebody wanted me. That's it. That is it, exactly. Someone showed me love and attention right there in that moment, who actually depended on me. And I just thought, I can't leave you. I cannot leave you. I didn't, and this sounds horrible to say, but I didn't care about my family.
Yeah.
I didn't care about my mum, my dad, my brother. I didn't care. But that dog who had been there for me, when I was struggling, when I was depressed on the sofa, couldn't get up, when I'm in bed, he was giving me the cuddles in bed. It was him who I thought, I can't leave you. Nobody else. And he saved my life, because I just thought, I just couldn't do that to him. Now, although I didn't take my life that day, I didn't magically just get better. That's when I would probably describe myself as a functioning depressive. I just kept going. I never told anybody. I only told people about these ideas, my family, last year. And that was in 2018 when I wanted to take my own life. So it was a lot of years after when I actually opened up to my family and said, this is how I felt at one point in my life. And it must have been very difficult for them. A family knowing that someone's struggling, someone they love struggling so much, and they didn't have a clue. It's scary. It is scary to find that out. But it took me a while to be brave enough to share that with people, because I had been seen in the public's eye, especially, as the police officer, the person who protects people.
The sunshine,
Exactly. Yeah. And my friends, they always thought, he's good positivity, always happy. To then say to people, by the way, that was all a lie. I was that person, yes, 22 years old, 21, 20, whatever. But at that point in my life, I wasn't. But I was still displaying those positive emotions, those positive behaviours.
So after the dog incident, how long did it take you then to start working on yourself? Was there something else that happened, another moment?
There was another moment, yeah. So, that should have been an awakening call for me, but it wasn't. I just get, you get stuck back in a rut, because see, when you surround yourself with people who are also in that rut, when you surround yourself in that environment in the police, it's so easy just to get back into it. So I got back stuck in the rut, still unhappy, but it was my last ever shift that changed my life. Now, I didn't know it was going to be my last ever shift. Now, looking back, it was my last ever shift. On my last ever shift, in the morning, I witnessed a young male take his own life. And I was there, I was first on scene, because I witnessed it happen. And I was first on scene, and I looked at him, and I couldn't get to him. The way he'd crashed his car, so he purposely crashed his car into the back of the lorry. So we just saw him all of a sudden speed up, turn in, and that was a common thing at that time, like on the carriageway where we worked. But we watched it, and then I was there, so we turned the police van round. The window, so I looked down, and the window, screen was all smashed, and you could just see his face, and the blood was just spurting out of his mouth, and he was in like all these bushes, and it was like a wee drop. I was like, I physically can't get down to help him. And then you just saw, the blood spurting, and then just the noise of him just taking his last breath. And his eyes were wide open, staring at me. And I'm sitting there going, I can't help you. And that is so horrific to witness that. Like, just for me, I was like, how the hell can you be here 1 minute and next minute you're gone? And it reminded me of me, because I wasn't going to crash my car, but I was that young male who wanted to take my own life. So it was a big, it hit me differently, I think, maybe than other people.
Yeah.
Not taken away from other people, but I think it did because it reminded me of the place that I was in that wanted to take my own life. And if that wasn't bad enough, 5 hours later, my colleague had a heart attack on shift and died. And I was there, the paramedics giving him CPR, and I'm just watching, and he's lost consciousness, he's completely grey, giving him CPR and taking him into the ambulance, and all my colleagues, some of the rest of my colleagues were all just waiting. The paramedics come out and they said, no, he's not made it. And yet again, when I was watching them give him CPR, I felt so helpless yet again on a second time that day, because I was like, well, he's in the best care possible. The paramedics are giving him CPR. But I cannot physically do anything else. And that helplessness really gets to you, because you think, I can't do anything to save you. And what made it worse was my colleague had 29 years service, 1 year left until he was going to retire. And he'd speak to me about, when I retire, I'm going to go travelling with my wife, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, all these plans. I was like, you were putting happiness into the future. You're putting happiness into, when I retire. And that, yet again, hit me hard, because I thought to myself, is that what I'm doing? Earlier on, I saw the past. I was like Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. I was seeing the past, and I was seeing the future. Was this going to be me in the future if I continued on? Because I knew the job affected my mental health. The job affected my mental health, and it changed me. How long could I have allowed it to go on for before I could have had a heart attack? Because what's it doing in your inside? That excess stress you are under day in, day out, that negativity, the mental deterioration that you experience, what was I going to do? Was I going to have a heart attack in 10 years time, 20 years time, whatever it may be? Because it has to be doing things in your inside. And it was an awakening, because I thought to myself, I need to focus on my happiness now. Especially hearing somebody telling you that they've got the plans for the future, the excitement of what they were going to do with his wife. Retirement, you think, why am I waiting to retire? I'm 27 years old. Why am I waiting? Or why am I waiting for 1 week's annual leave, 2 weeks annual leave for a holiday abroad somewhere? I'm like, this is brilliant. Why was I waiting for those things? I needed to be happy in every day. Now, of course I'm going to be unhappy some days. That's how life works. But I need to put my happiness first, do things for myself. And my job was something that affected me the most. So I needed to change it. And it actually, I don't know if that was going to be an awakening as much as I would like to think. But my mind made it an awakening, because my mental health deteriorated again at that point, as you can imagine. I was experiencing that. And it deteriorated to the point where it actually manifested itself in a physical injury in my knee. I tore my ACL on that day, and for the next 5 months I struggled to walk. Now, I didn't tear my ACL because I fell over or whatever. My mind thought, right, we need to make him stop. We need to take him out of the game completely. What can we do? And we all have different weak points in our body. And obviously my knee, I had a previous injury in my knee, but they were like, right, that's the weak point. And it tore my ACL. So for the next 5 months, I had to take time off work. And that's when I realized all these things about what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do in my life. And none of it correlated with being in the police anymore. None of it did.
What help are you getting there, Rob? In that time you've torn your ACL, are you just sitting with yourself and talking to yourself?
Yeah.
Are you on YouTube? Are you searching for stuff? What are you doing, sir?
To be honest with you, I was watching things that I loved, so I was kind of focusing on just like, what do I love? But I wasn't getting any help in terms of what do I need to do to get through this. And I remember I went to my inspector and I said to him, I'm struggling mentally. And he said, he was on his laptop, and he looked at me and he says, you'll need to get that sorted. I went back to his laptop, and I was like, 5 years of protecting everybody else, 5 years of putting my life on the line, literally putting my life on the line, going into calls where people had knives, people had guns, giving myself to that job, and that's how they repaid me in that last moment. I was like, thanks, thank you so much. And
it's tough, don't it? He could be like, he could be suffering himself in mental health. Yeah. You've said it, and he doesn't want to.
Exactly. And
around we go.
Exactly.
And nobody's talking.
And that's the problem. We don't have that open communication
Yeah.
in the police force that we needed. Because if we had that open communication, I would bet even if he hadn't have spoke about his mental health, by someone opening up, it probably would have got him opening up.
Yeah.
Or if he was already opened up, he would have responded to that completely differently. Like, right, we need to get you help, but first, let's talk, you and I. Let's talk about it. Let's get to the crux of what's happening.
Yeah.
But instead, it was just like, well, you'll need to get that sorted. And you think, really? You are a person too. Yeah. How many times do you actually get more help from a friend or family member or whoever it may be, rather than a therapist? You don't need necessarily a therapist to talk through things. Yeah. It's people who can understand, people who are empathetic. Yeah. And it was when I was off, I just asked myself really difficult questions. Like, I looked in the mirror and see the person looking back at me, I was like, I do not like who you've become.
Yeah, I've been there, mate.
And it's really confronting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very confronting, because especially when you're by yourself and you're just looking at yourself, you think,
it's brutal.
Oh, how can I change that? Yeah. And you feel shame. I felt shame of who I'd became. Yeah. Shameful of my actions, shameful of whatever it was in a relationship time. I wasn't a good boyfriend. And shame overcomes you. Yeah. It overcame me anyway. And that makes it even more difficult, because you think, wait a minute, I need to focus on sort of the shame element before I can even change. And it takes a lot. I'm not sure how you felt, but it just takes a lot of deep reflection. And it's that deep reflection where you can then start asking yourself those questions. And you have to ask yourself these difficult questions, don't you? Even though it's difficult. It's awful. Yeah. But if you don't, what's the alternative? Accepting who you've become. But by actually asking yourself, who am I? And not liking the person, that's your first step to be like, well, I know I don't want to be this person. So what do I need to do to not be that person? And I knew that I wanted to be back to the person I was. Now, I've since been diagnosed with PTSD, so I can never go back to who I was. Well, age 21, I've experienced too many things. I've had too much trauma in those 5 years. I'll never go back, but I can be similar to that person. I can bring back that positivity, and that's what I was thinking in these 5 months. I can bring back that positivity. I can enjoy life again. I can be happy. But first of all, I need to focus on, well, what is happiness for me? And that question was difficult. And I didn't know what the answer was. I didn't know who I wanted to be necessarily. Yeah. I just knew who I didn't want to be. I didn't know what made me happy, but I knew what didn't make me happy. The police didn't make me happy. So quit. And after 5 months, when I was better, I was like, right, I've got a decision. Do I go back to that life? Or do I quit and start something new? And I was like, well, it's a no-brainer, because in those 5 months, I slept better. Now, yes, my knee was in agony, but I slept better. I ate better. I looked after myself in different ways, where all of a sudden I was engaging in healthier behaviours rather than the negative, unhealthy behaviours that you would do in the police. And, my friends, my colleagues, we'd finish a night shift, and sometimes, awful night shift, you think that was brutal. And I'd go home at 7 a.m. and you think, oh my God, right, I need to go to bed soon, but I'll maybe have a tea or something just to relax me. But for him, booze, get the drink. Thankfully I never self-medicated through drink or drugs, but I self-medicated through other things, where the unfaithfulness in a relationship, the sex, that kind of stuff, that's probably how that kind of stuff, the sexual stuff, is probably how I self-medicated. But other people, and I've seen it, people turn to drink, drugs, whatever it may be. And you can only go for so long by self-medicating on unhealthy behaviours, can't you? Because for me, it was well, if I keep doing that, I'll be dead before I'm 30, not because I'll die doing sexual things or whatever. It'll just be because all that built up negativity and the shame, that will always take over. And that will, that anxiety, that paranoia, all that, that's what will take over. Yeah. And people with drink or whatever, you get into obsession with that. And it's a very difficult time to be able to say, right, stop all this. I didn't manage to overnight. it was, those 5 months gave me that platform to be like, right, Rob, you've got 5 months. Well, I didn't know I had 5 months, but you've got time. I knew that the ACL injury in my knee was going to take time to heal. So take time to yourself. Ask yourself shitty questions that you might not want to know the answer to, but ask yourself it and see where we get to. Because anything you do is better than what you were. So when you hit rock bottom, you think, well, the only way's up. The only thing I did, whether it's any decision I make, surely it's going to be better than where I am. I've made shitty decisions. So, and that's what I did. And in the space of 2 weeks, I quit my job, ended a relationship, and sold my house. Because all of a sudden I was like, clarity, I'm clear of who I wanted to be. And none of these things aligned. Now, ending the relationship, that was a given. Because, well, I can't be unfaithful and think, well, no, that's going to continue. No, I knew, yes, I was unfaithful. I think a lot of the trauma that I was experiencing went into that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I was also unfaithful because I was unhappy in a relationship. So there was all these things. So I was like, I just knew all of a sudden by analysing my life, I just knew the things I had to fix.
And what are you thinking of doing once you've done all that? What was your plan?
I just thought, thankfully, so my parents lived in Belfast and they actually moved over to where I lived. Not because of what I was going through, they didn't know, but they moved over. It was just eventually, my brother had a kid, that's what it was, and they wanted to be closer to the grandchildren. And they moved over, and I'm so close to my dad, he was like best friend to me, I'm so close to my mum too, but for the first time in 10 years, because I didn't live near them for 10 years, for the first time in 10 years, I actually had a support group there. Yeah. Even if I didn't tell them anything, but it was a support group in terms that I felt safe there.
Yeah, safety's there.
That's it. Yeah. And they moved over at that time. So this decision of selling my house, ending a relationship and quitting my job, that was correlated with them coming over. And I moved in with them initially. I went back to my safe space. And I just felt like this relief. Just like, oh my goodness. Then COVID hit like 3 weeks later. But it was, and then COVID, yet again, it allowed me a lot of reflection and time to be like, well, what do I want to do with my life? Who do I want to be? So it kind of prolonged those kind of questions, but it was good because I knew what I didn't want. So I think that's where you have to start.
When was the time that you knew what you wanted to do? What was that?
I think I knew, to be honest with you, in terms of the motivational speaking stuff that I do now, that took probably about a year, maybe even a year and a half after I've left the police. Right. Because I felt like, when I left the police, I thought I've removed the thing that's causing me trauma, the PTSD. I've removed it, and I focused on that last shift. I thought that last shift, that was the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. But I didn't realize at that time that coffin had many nails in it before that final nail. That last shift was just the last shift. That was the final straw. And it took a while for me to actually remember this trauma. I just thought, I've removed myself from it, I'll heal now. I've healed from that last shift. But a year and a half or a year after, I started experiencing the PTSD symptoms.
Like what?
I was getting flashbacks at night. I was getting night terrors. So I'd wake up shouting, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off. So I'm allowed to swear, yeah. I'm like, fuck off, fuck off. And my partner's like, my now partner, she's like, what's wrong? I was like, oh, don't know, like, what's happening? And she's scary for her when I'm having these outbursts at night. I'm saying other things at night just randomly, and she's like, what's wrong? I'm like shaking uncontrollably. I was getting the sweats at night. So the night terrors for me was the biggest one. Yeah. And I wasn't, I was afraid to go to sleep each night. I was afraid of going to sleep because I was like, I'm not thinking about the police. Before I'm going to sleep, I'm like happy, I might go to bed. And then all of a sudden, all this happens.
Opens up.
That's it. And that's when I realized, shit, there's so much here that is actually unhealed. I was focusing on that last shift. What about the 5 years of built up trauma? Cutting down someone who's hanging, telling their wife, by the way, he's just taking his own life, reading the notes that he had put for his wife and his children.
How do you do something like that, Rob? How do you in the moment? How do you deal with something like that?
Professionalism takes over.
You just like fucking deep, compact.
Yeah, and that it's dangerous to do that though. But you need to do it at that point because you just think I can't break down in tears.
But then you've got to feel it afterwards.
But you need to feel it, and not enough people feel it. You know, we have the dark humor in the place. We're like, we'll say the jokes, and that's fine initially because you need to keep going on your shift.
Yeah.
But
if you can't feel it, you can't heal it, can you?
That's it, exactly. And with all my colleagues that I've worked with, we all enjoyed their dark humor.
Yeah.
How many of us was doing the healing work?
Yeah.
We weren't. We were doing the dark humor and the dark humor and the dark humor and dark humor, and then maybe self-medicating through the unhealthy behaviors. But we weren't feeling what we felt. We needed to feel, geez, that was brutal. Because then I had to tell his 14-year-old son that his dad's just taking his own life.
Hell.
Then, the wife's on my shoulder. I'm giving her a hug, trying to show some compassion. Be like, it's fine. It's fine. What can you say? It's fine. It's not fine. Your partner's died. But, you'll get through it, or whatever it may have been at that time. Because there's so many of them, I don't even know what my script was for each of them, because it would have been different. Then telling the 14-year-old son, when you're experiencing indirect trauma like that, so I'm experiencing the trauma of cutting down somebody or attending a fatal crash. And then you've got the indirect trauma of going to the parents and saying, with the fatal crash, one of the fatal crashes, you go to the parents and say, yeah, your son. And they're like, what about him? We've just seen him half an hour ago. I'm like, yeah, he's just had a crash and he's not made it. He's passed away. And then you can imagine the initial trauma that they're exuding onto you.
I thought of that, the indirect trauma.
Exactly. And you're thinking, like, this is brutal. Like that person was a perfect example where I had to tell his family, his parents, that he'd passed away. Then I had to tell his wife, who they were just told that they were expecting a baby a month before that. And I had to say, he's no longer here. They just got married 2 months before it. She just ran out and went into a car and just sped off. And then we're like, right now we've got another problem. So yet again, that's your professional head on, because like, right now, forget about this trauma. I need to focus on her safety, because she just drove off. Right, we get this registration
push that down to the back. Can't deal with that. Move on. Exactly.
And then in the police, for example, when I cut down that person who'd hung themselves, I had him over my shoulder, put him down on the floor. Then 10 minutes later, not 10 minutes, half an hour later, or whatever it may have been, we're eating our dinner. And then another call comes out, right, there's a shoplifting, and you're like, right, we'll go again. How can I heal from...
You don't have time to process.
You don't have time. And that last shift is a perfect example of... It's bad enough not being able to process trauma when you're going to other things, but when you're going from trauma to trauma, that last shift, that traumatic incident in the morning, within the space of 5-6 hours, a traumatic event later on in the day, 2 traumatic events in the one shift, and that's normal, unfortunately. And some days you'll get no trauma, but most of the time, you'll get a traumatic event, and they'll look different. It might be, you're dealing with somebody who's got a knife, who's threatening you with a knife. That's trauma. If someone's abusing you, trying to fight you, that's trauma. Or the trauma where, people are dying in front of you, that's the different level of trauma, but it's all trauma.
Yeah.
And then you've got the indirect trauma, and you think your days are made up, your shifts are made up of trauma, but are you healing from it? How can you?
How can you?
How can you when you go again? And I talk about that go again culture. And yes, they have to do it, but they don't have to not heal. Yes, people have to experience these traumas. Yeah. It's part of the job, unfortunately. But how can we help them? They need mandatory counselling. Whether you want to speak about it or not, it's just put them in a room, and there's a counsellor there who's trained. They might ask you questions, and you might not want to talk, but at least the option's there. You might never talk, but the option always needs to be there, and it needs to be a mandatory option. Because in the police, see if you attended like a very traumatic incident. Now I say very traumatic, that's the problem with the police, where
they ask you, do you need help, and you say no.
Exactly. You get an email 2 days after from this service called Trim. We know that you've experienced this, do you want counselling services for this? We're here, we can come to you, whatever.
That's it.
And that's it.
An email.
And you think, I'm an email? I'm that all I've done and I'm an email? And your colleague, he'd say, did you get that email from Trim? And you're like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I just deleted it. And you're like, I'll be deleting it too. Because, it's the culture. And you get sucked into that culture. Well, if you think that's a lot of shit, isn't it? You then think, it's a lot of crap.
If you did answer it, how long would it take for you to actually talk to somebody?
I think they probably would have been quick enough. I'm not sure how many people they had working for them, but I think they would have been quick enough. I think probably within the week.
Right, okay.
But, personally, you need it then and there.
Yeah.
If you say you need counselling, I think you might not have another week in you, because you don't know what that is bringing up, how it's making you feel, whatever it may be. But you might think of suicidal thoughts after that.
Yeah.
You might think, I can't go on.
Yeah.
That last shift's a perfect example. Where it's like, it just made me think yet again. I'm like, what is life?
Yeah.
So
the trauma thing's really, do you just say the indirect trauma? There's that many different types. I had such a problem with trauma at one point that I know people whose like brothers have hung themselves, and someone who's been sexually abused, and all these, and I thought, bloody, I've not got trauma, mate.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's trauma.
Yeah.
But and then when I started looking at it, I was like, fucking, I've got so much trauma. It's ridiculous, from a dog that I got put down when I was 17 to what's it, and people, the relationship with trauma is not a good one.
No.
Is it?
No. And that's the thing, trauma means something different to every single one of us.
Yeah.
People might think that was trauma, some people might not. But it's individual, so you dictate what trauma is to you. And perfect example of my uncle, he was in the police force in Belfast, and that was during the Troubles, so you can imagine car bombs left, right and centre. And he experienced a lot. And it's only now, I think, 20 years after he's retired, that he's now getting counselling. And his wife is now getting counselling too, because of the indirect trauma, the secondary trauma that she's experienced through those years with him being in the police. And now she's getting her own therapy.
Amazing.
Not just couple therapy, it's her therapy, because secondary trauma has impacted her, even though she never witnessed any of that. He witnessed it all. So
I've heard that before, Rob.
No, exactly.
Never heard that before.
A point more needs to be done.
It makes perfect sense that happens.
It doesn't. Of course, it's going to have an impact on your partner who's there by your side day in day. Of course, it's going to. But we don't think it.
Yeah.
But now, when we think it, we think,
shit,
makes sense. How many people out there are struggling with something that they may not know, but it's maybe secondary trauma, indirect trauma, whatever it may be? How many of them are experiencing that, but don't really understand, and maybe just think they're going through a depressive episode or whatever, but actually need the therapy based on their partner's trauma or friend's trauma, whoever it may be.
When did you know that this was your calling? When did you know that you needed to spread this message?
To be honest, it took me a while to open up to anybody about everything. And I put a LinkedIn message out. I put a LinkedIn post up once, and I just said my experience and my last shift and how it made me feel. And I got like 400 likes and stuff, and people sharing it. And it was then I was like, oh, wow, like people are like so grateful that I've just shared this message. They're so like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. I now feel seen, I feel heard. People responding to me, partners actually responding to me. These women, I think 2 of them responded. They said, my partner's in the fire service, or my partner's in the police service, and they're experiencing all this. What can I do to help them? And then even police officers themselves reaching out, like, thank you so much for sharing this. I feel the same. What can we do more? And all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, people are actually responding to it. Is this because, it's divine intervention, so to speak, where I'm like, I've done this thing, and it took
purpose.
me, and it's my purpose now, because people are showing an interest in it. And it took me so long to press that post button. I had that thing what I wanted to say for a while, but after week, I thought, I need to do that. But anytime I was going to, I was like, oh no, I don't want to. I am a very private person. I don't want people to know my business anyway.
It's not about you though.
But it wasn't about me. That's it. And see, when I pressed post, that's what changed, I think, everything for me. Once I sent post, I obviously realised something in me.
What was it, Rob, that made you press that post at that time? What was it?
I think it was that idea of, this isn't about me.
Right.
You hit the nail on the head, where it was about the people who were suffering.
Yeah.
And it was so much bigger than me. And, I see so many times another police officer's taking his own life. somebody else in the public taking their own life, male mental health. Yeah. We know the stats around that. There's so much out there that is wrong with society that we need to do more. And I thought, I'm not a decision maker, I'm not a policy maker, but what can I do? I've got a voice. We all have a voice, and I have an experience that goes with it. I'm a man, which helps in terms of the male mental health. And I was in a profession where you probably wouldn't think, oh, you're suffering with your mental health. You look at the police. The police do get a bad rap, and a lot of them probably deserve their bad rap. But there's also a human side to the police. And I thought, I was that human side to the police where I was suffering. I was in that profession where people were saying, oh, lads, that's lads, the macho culture.
Yeah, you can deal with anything.
Deal with anything. But all of a sudden, well, I couldn't. And to get that out there for people to then think, oh, geez, a police officer who's that macho culture. Yeah. And it's just taken arms and legs from there, and people want to listen. People want to learn.
When did TEDx approach you?
I connected with people on LinkedIn, and he'd seen my stuff, and he contacted me about, I think it suited the theme. It was down in Bristol, and it suited his theme that he was going with, and it was called like bags and baggages. So it's about what we carry with us in our life, and this idea of happiness and trauma. He's like, he saw me posting about stuff like that, and he's like, wait a minute, this is actually a good fit. This is perfect. And I did a talk in Orlando. I went to Orlando to do a talk at this conference, and that was my first ever talk. So I started sharing on LinkedIn saying like, I'm not giving talks and things like that. And then all of a sudden TEDx came from it, and I was just like, wow, like it's a full circle moment. I couldn't even open up. And now I'm giving a TEDx talk about my experiences. Yeah. And it was emotional. I remember my family dog died about 3 days before I did the TEDx talk, and I was so depressed about it, because I just loved him, and he was just a lovable rogue, this wee doggy. And I was that close to cancelling the TEDx talk because I couldn't speak. Yeah. I was like, wait a minute, I'm speaking about trauma. Although I wasn't speaking about him, I was like, I'm speaking about trauma, but I'm not healed from something that I'm experiencing now. You're saying about the trauma about putting your dog down at 17. Yeah. Dogs have that impact on you. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I took days to get over that. And I was like, no, this TEDx talk needs to happen. Not just out of a selfish point of view. It was a platform, and it was the biggest platform that I'd done at that point, where other people can hear my story. And that's what it was. It was bigger than me. Yes, of course, in terms of a professional sense, I wanted to do a TEDx talk about it. But at that point I thought, no, this story needs to be out, and this is a perfect place to do it. So I just thought, right, Rob, go on with it and do it. It was hard because I was going through that trauma, and at the end of it I just felt all this emotion. I was like, oh, now I can properly grieve. But it was difficult.
How did you do on stage?
What did you say?
How did you go on stage?
How
did you do it?
It was brilliant.
Was it the first time you stood up and did it? How many people were there?
It was, I think there was about 80 people, and I said I did a talk in Orlando, and I did another few talks before then, but this was the one where I was like, right, this is the biggest audience at that point. And there was pressure because it's like, right, getting recorded TEDx, you've got a limited 15 minutes and all. I was like, oh, jeez. But I just thought, Rob, just be you. Just do what you want. And I went up there, and the feedback that I get, people are like, geez, you're so calm up there. And I just forgot about the time. I just went, tell your story the way you tell your story.
On stage, did you feel like you were home?
I did.
Did you feel that is what you were born to do, mate?
Yeah, because these pauses. Some people when they're doing talks, they're like, I need to get over and done with it. Yeah. But I was just there, and I just paused sometimes, for dramatic effect. But also, I just looked around too, and I just took it all in. Yeah. And I was just like, this is my purpose.
You found your calling.
This is my calling. Yeah. I loved it. I don't get nervous. Look, I think an hour before, like say, I get to an event space, that's when I get nervous.
Is it nervous or is it excitement?
It's probably a bit of both. Yeah. It's nervously excited because I'm nervous because I want to do it well.
Yeah.
But I'm excited because I'm like, I love being there. I love being on stage. I love the energy. I love just everyone, all eyes on me and listening to the story. I love it. And I've never had any training, never had anything. And but the feedback I get, they're like, geez, you're just a natural there. And that is literally it. It's a natural calling.
Amazing, mate.
And I love it, and I get so much joy from it. never mind when people come up to me after and they say, you've got me thinking about my own life. And the TEDx talk, a police officer came up to me and he says, I'm actually in the police in London. And he says, everything that you're telling me, he says, I witness it too. I experience all these things. It's affecting me. And he says, I just don't think, what else could I do? He says, what else could I do in my life though? That's what I think. And I said, but I'm the example. There's other things you can do in your life. You can find a purpose. You can find something you love. And he's like, oh, thank you so much. Like I've learned so much from it, and now I'm going to take some decisions in my life. And I think that had to happen to the biggest stage at that point.
Just for that one person.
Exactly. And it had to be a police officer.
Had to be.
And I just thought, wow. And now, 2 weeks ago, I gave a talk to over 100 police officers across the whole UK.
Oh, that's amazing, Rob.
And I just think, wow, this is a full circle. But before, I didn't even want to do anything with the police. I had a lot of anger with the police, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
A lot of resentment. And I just thought I didn't want to be part of their culture again, even though it wasn't. But I didn't want to even be there. But yet again, that purpose element came up, and I was like, Rob.
Yeah, you were put in the place to experience exactly what it's like, for then to go back to it to say, look.
Exactly. To help the people who are doing it.
Mad, the universe.
Yeah.
How it works.
It is. And I just, there's so many things in my life that's happened like that. And I just think, but it's went full circle, and it's had to happen for a reason. I had that resentment to the police, and now I'm giving talks to the police, and I'm feeling like
they need it, mate, don't they?
And that's it. It's the officers who need me. The police force, I can criticise the police force until the cows come home. There's so much, I think, wrong with the police force in general throughout the UK. But it's not about them. It's about the people the good people who are giving their day in, day out their best for a job to try to protect the public. Now, not every single person's got those good intentions, I know, but there is a lot of people.
Yeah, agreed.
And they need me. And not just them, but just people in public, whether it's men or just anybody suffering with mental health difficulties, but especially men, seeing another man up there talking and being like, it's okay. It's okay to talk. We need to talk. Yet again, I think for men especially, seeing other people do it, it's so like transformational, isn't it? Especially seeing a man doing it. And
beautiful, mate.
And
when did you set up your business then? When did you find?
Yeah, we were living in Valencia, me and my partner, and I was in an environment where I was just all of a sudden all this creativity came to me because it was in a happy place.
Yeah.
And I was always a creative person growing up, but the police, yet again, it took my creativity away because I was too busy thinking of trauma rather than new ideas. But we were living in Valencia. I was so happy in terms of my environment. And all these ideas just come into my head. I was like, what's this? Like, my creativity's back. This is brilliant. And I always knew I wanted to do something in the industry in terms of mental health and happiness. And I thought, what about we do something about a magazine? Now, my mum used to be in the magazine industry back when she used to work back when I was young. And I was like, I loved being part of that when she'd take me to work and show me how things were done. I loved the designing of the magazine. I loved the sales part of it. I loved everything. I was like, what about we do a magazine then? And people share their stories.
What's the magazine called?
So it's called Rise of Happiness.
Yep.
So the business is called Rise of Happiness and the magazine is called Rise of Happiness. And we put it free initially, just get the word out there, right? Everyone can get a copy, and people share their stories in their words. So many magazines out there, you're reading an interview or like newspapers, they paraphrase, they might take a quote from your interview or whatever, and sometimes I've seen it with myself, they kind of change the meaning of it fully, and you're like, I didn't really want it to be like that. And I was like, no, this is important. If people are going to share their stories, it needs to be in their words, because also people are going to get more from that. Me reading that, I'm seeing someone being so vulnerable, I'd be like, oh geez, I can feel that raw emotion. So that was the first one. I was like, let's people share their stories in their words, and then let's also have expert tips and advice about how people can actually look after their mental health, their well-being, their happiness. Just changing this narrative of what happiness actually is and what we're chasing in life, because I think we follow society's expectations of what happiness and success. But let's change it. And the magazine's all about changing our perception with people's stories about how they cope with their struggles, but also the tips and stuff. whether it's tips about what you can do in your life with nutrition, sleep, whatever it may be.
Tools.
Exactly. And so they've got the readers have got two takeaways. They've got the takeaways of vulnerable stories, which have an impact in themselves. Yeah. Your podcast, a perfect example. Yeah. People telling stories matter in this world. But also then the takeaways of, right, an expert's now telling me this works. Let me try some of these on. So yeah, the magazine's been going since August 2022, so it's been a year now, just over a year, and it's now going into WH Smith from December, so we're going to be on the stall. So yeah,
how do you feel?
Excitedly nervous, yeah, again, but I am excited. Like, we know that it's a great product because we're doing it for the right reason, and people sharing their stories, people get something from it, and we've had so much feedback. People are saying, this is amazing, like, I've actually learned so much. And also the contributors themselves, see, when they've written their stories, they've came to us and says, this has been a really cathartic experience.
It's like journaling down,
exactly,
getting it out of your own head.
And it's nice because we have a mix. We have normal members of the public, but we also have people in the public eye. So, like, say, Sky Sports presenter Simon Thomas and football Clark Carlisle, he did an article in this latest issue. A wrestler did a previous wrestler for the WWE's done an article for us. So it's that nice balance of everyday people stories and
with
people
somebody that you might know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because yet again, it highlights this idea of we're all the same.
Yeah.
No matter if you've got all the money in the world, all the fame in the world, none at all, whatever, we all experience mental health, happiness, well-being, whatever it may be in that bracket. We all experience it. You're not safe because you're in the public eye. And yet again, it's that idea of we're all got mental health, so let's talk about it.
Who do you see now you look in the mirror?
I see somebody who is firstly happy. I mean, that's the main thing. I see someone who is, yet again, positive. He's got his creativity. He's got his spark back, so to speak. And he's Rob. He's the Rob that I knew and I wanted to be again. Now, I do see under the eyes sometimes the trauma still there, but I wear it now. It's like a different hat. I'm like, it's just another hat that I wear that it'll always be part of my life. As I said, since being diagnosed with PTSD, it'll always be a part of me, but it's a part of me that I'll never let control me. It's going to be, I'll live with it.
It's just a part of you.
Exactly, and that's the perfect way of putting it. It's just a part, and the rest of me is happy, positive, and just love life. And for where I was of wanting my life to end to now loving life and seeing the potential of life, it's a beautiful full circle moment.
Thank you, Rob. How can people get in touch with you? How can they get in touch with you? They want you to do a talk. How can people find the magazine?
So if you go onto the website, which is www.riseofhappiness.com, check out the magazine. You can get your free copy at the minute right now before the December issue, so you can download your free copy. And for myself, if you go on Instagram, my Instagram is Talking with Rob, and my website's also talkingwithrob.com. And you can get in touch by getting me into your business, talk about happier staff, because happy staff are 13% more productive. So there you go. That's it. That's a good one. And yeah, just this idea of happier staff and how they can manage stress and the mental health. And you can get in touch with LinkedIn, just type in Rob Hosking. But the Instagram and the website's probably the best ones.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
So much.
Thank you so much, mate. Thank you for everybody for listening. Goodbye.